I am really excited about our next guest. It's taken us a few weeks to get him because he's a busy guy. Also, we got to launch a new show. I met Chris Helali in Greece in an undisclosed location. No, but really, Chris Helali is a candidate for Congress in Vermont right now. He is he's the subject of this DHS targeting of Antifa members. You may recall we had Ken Klippenstein on to discuss that. He was on yesterday, actually, Ken, talking about something else, and of course that's because he fought ISIS, which is a fascinating topic to start off with. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Nomiki.
So, Chris, let's just start off, right off the bat. You fought ISIS, and there's a small group of folks who a few years ago went to Syria, independent of any, not being in the military at that time, at least, the U.S. military, to fight ISIS on their own, which is, I think, to most people, a little crazy. What inspired you to go to Syria?
So I am an Iranian Kurd. So that was part of the rationale was since ISIS emerged, Daesh emerged in Iraq and Syria, and we started to see a lot of the horrific atrocities and the genocide, for example, of the Yazidi people in Sinjar. We knew for sure that some of us who were connected with one another that we would try to go and to fight. I had known about the PKK for through my childhood, of course, and their transition from Marxism-Leninism to a more democratic confederalism, Murray-Bookchin type libertarian socialist project. And of course, I was, I myself I grew up a Marxist-Leninist, and then I slowly transitioned to anarchism and have post-Rojava come back to that position. But of course, what was the real thing was I went in 2016 and worked with refugees in Greece. So I spent nearly a year working with refugees, went to Lesbos, and was primarily in Athens in a squatted community, and worked very closely with the Kurdish organizations in Athens. And eventually they said, you're Kurdish and you have an obligation and you should go fight. So there I am. So
looking clean shaven there.
There you go. So we fought with the International Freedom Battalion, which was a sort of a mixture of anarchists, communists, and socialists, various anti-imperialists and anti-authoritarians. But it was headed by predominantly some communist parties in Turkey that have guerrilla units. So we fought, and I fought there for 9 months, and I was on the Raqqa campaign. And of course, while there, I became disillusioned with sort of the project in northeast Syria, and switched a lot of my positions, as did a few other comrades as well.
How so?
I think for me, the U.S. and coalition involvement has been extremely counterproductive, as we've seen the U.S. And we knew this while we were there, and we would talk with the leadership. But the U.S. wasn't there to protect the Kurds. They were there primarily to hamper the efforts of the Russian Federation and the Syrian government under Bashar al-Assad to maintain control over what was quickly becoming to us apparent was a sort of Balkanization of the Syrian Arab Republic. So I think as an anti-imperialist, the fight against ISIS was correct. But then again, ISIS had many strange ties to backers and funders through different operatives in the Emirates and Saudi Arabia, and then of course connecting back to the CIA and the Mossad. So I think that the Syrian conflict is a quagmire. I think that the Syrian people of all different ethnicities and religious traditions should chart out their own path without the imperialist involvement of the US and NATO. And so I think that right now the conflict has reached a stalemate because the US won't leave. Turkey, of course, is involved heavily with supporting the remnants of the Al-Qaeda affiliates in Idlib and having brought in their own sort of jihadist proxy forces into Serikania, Ras al-Ain, where I was located in northeast Syria. And I think that right now you just see that the Syrian conflict won't be ending anytime soon.
So, in terms of this DHS monitoring, I mean, there was a story that broke. Can we put that article up on screen, the one from The Nation with Clint Klippenstein, where he got a tip that DHS was monitoring what, of course, the U.S. government thought was Antifa members, whatever that means. Darcy, do we have that link, the Nation link, to put up there? Okay, we'll hold for that. It'll pop up. And you know, we've had Ken on to talk about this, and it just seems like it goes against the interest, Antifa or not. It seems like going after folks who were, I thought, aligned with the U.S. interests would be an odd thing to monitor folks like you. Do you have any understanding as to why you were monitored?
Sure, of course. I mean, we know very well because the Americans were on the ground in northeast Syria that the Americans were not at all pleased with the sort of revolutionary rhetoric behind what was the political project going on in northeast Syria. And they were very, very upset with the International Freedom Battalion and a lot of different groups within northeast Syria who were spreading different anti-fascist, anti-imperialist messages.
Can I ask you a question? When you say spreading anti-fascist, anti-imperialist messages, who are you spreading them to?
Well, I mean, like, the people would just go and do solidarity posts. Like, you know, you'd have a bunch of comrades together with some AKs or, you know, some RPGs, and you'd say, Black Lives Matter, or you'd say this kind of stuff. And so, of course, that kind of stuff went viral on social media. I mean, It was here today, gone the next. I mean, most people don't even remember a lot of these posts. The thing was that the U.S. didn't want any of that to really, go out. And they didn't really find, it was an alliance of convenience at best. But the U.S. Didn't even want the International Freedom Battalion to participate in a lot of the operations and pressured the Kurds, the SDF, to not put them out there. Because, of course, the Kurds were, the different communist parties that were there were terrorists in and of themselves to the Americans and to NATO. I mean, they're fighting guerrilla wars in Turkey against the second largest NATO army. So it was an alliance of convenience. It was all wrapped up. Of course, the media loved the narrative of, the women Kurdish fighters and look at them fighting against ISIS. So they tolerated it for a period of time. But, when the minute I stepped back into the United States, I was monitored. I was stopped. I was questioned for hours and hours in detention. I've been handcuffed multiple times. 2017, when I got back. And then since then, every time I cross international borders, either leaving the United States or coming into the United States, I'm handcuffed, put into a room, and sometimes detained up to 8 or 10 hours. And all my stuff is taken. They take pictures of all my books and articles I have and things like that. And that's why the report clearly states that I was bringing in communists and anarchists. Most of my stuff is theoretical, or I have some book on, the Greek Civil War and history and this kind of stuff. They take pictures of it all. They scan it all. I
have that book too. Come on.
I know. It's like, come on. So a lot of that stuff has been ongoing, and we know that we're under surveillance. And it's been very apparent. I get the 4 S's on my I don't know if you know about on your airline ticket. If you have the 4 S's, you're selected for secondary screening. And of course, the thing goes that you've been selected. And of course, I tell them that it's been multiple years that I've had the 4 S's on my, airline tickets. But they take you to secondary screening. They check for bombs. They check for this. They do all sorts of swabs, and it's not too pleasant. That's for sure. But the targeting, of course, is now with everything going on in the U.S. and with, sort of the anti-fascist movement picking up steam, especially, connected to in solidarity with the black proletariat and sort of the black working classes revolts against police brutality and murder. Obviously now it's a threat to the U.S. government in a sense that it changes the narrative and brings the protests home. The protests aren't outside of the borders. Now they're in the borders.
Right. So how did you learn that you were being monitored? I mean, in this stage, officially through DHS?
So through all my stops, I realized very fast that, something was in the system, because when they would scan my passport, a red light would start blinking. And of course, the last time an alarm went off, literally. And, 10 cruisers came down. I was at the border between Vermont and Canada, coming back from visiting family in Canada after a funeral in Montreal. So I get there, they scan the passport, and everybody surrounds the vehicle, with guns. And I'm asked to put my hands outside the window, unlock, I have to have all my hands up and, opening the door of the car. And then they all grab me and handcuff me and bring me inside. So, pretty soon thereafter, after all these incidents, I realized that I must be on a list somewhere. And
when was this one, the one at the border? Was this after Trump was elected?
Yeah. The most recent one was just this past January. And of course, I have a close friend who told me that somebody had come around Dartmouth College, where I'm a graduate student, asking about me, and that they thought they were FBI. So I have been monitored on and off since 2013. After the Boston Marathon bombings, I was in Boston at the time, and of course, there was an original thing that they didn't know who did it, so they went after immediately maybe leftist groups. We had a small Marxist reading group. And my house was raided, actually.
But this is prior. This is the Boston bombing is 5 years prior to your going overseas.
Correct. Under the Obama administration. But already then, we knew that they were monitoring various leftist groups. So this was post-Occupy. So yeah. Occupy is in the crosshairs. A lot of different leftist groups are starting to emerge as vocal critics of the U.S. empire, of capitalism, of what's going on with the ruling class in this country and around the world. So we knew that we were being monitored, and they had thought that I was stockpiling weapons. So they came into the house, the Joint Terrorism Task Force. Yeah, and found a lot of books. Yeah. Found a lot of books and, different paraphernalia. But so a lot of this stuff has just been going on. Now, of course,
you were a member of the military, so it's not like you went. There were folks who went to Syria. We read the stories, who had no experience using a weapon, but you had basically defected from the U.S. military.
Well, I resigned. I resigned my commission as, citing being a conscientious objector. I joined the military really to pay for school, and very quickly thereafter had to get out, as I wasn't going to fight for wars of empire. I wish we had free education. I wouldn't have to do that. Neither would a lot of other people out there.
Yeah.
But the military is, the poor person's draft, really. You got healthcare and education, and you got to serve the empire and big business to go and steal and plunder. So, yeah, I had military training previously. But, of course, the war in Rojava, the war in Syria in general, was nothing that a conventional military training would prepare you for. I was extremely asymmetric. There were a lot of different situations where first of all, we didn't have the equipment that you have in the U.S. military.
Yeah.
This was a people's army, really.
Where did you find the equipment? Was it from your allies on the ground there?
So a lot of the equipment originally was stockpiled by locals, of course, over the years. Don't forget, this is sort of where it gets a little muddy. The Kurdish, the PKK's leader, the Kurdistan Workers' Party's leader, Abdullah Öcalan, was the guest of Hafiz al-Assad, Bashar al-Assad's father, for decades. He had his base in Damascus under Assad's father. And the Kurds in northeast Syria fought in the PKK against Turkey because Turkey was a NATO country and Syria was aligned with the Soviet Union. After the Soviet Union collapsed, very quickly the PKK found unfriendly reception in Damascus until the late 90s, where Turkey threatened to invade Syria if they didn't kick out Öcalan from Damascus, so he was thrown out. So the Kurds in northeast Syria, and as well as the Arabs, the Assyrians, the Armenians, everybody was armed. They had stockpiles. So basically, once the civil war kicked off, Assad's forces withdrew, and they just took all the weapons from the depots and armed themselves, and they formed local militias and things like that. And then, of course, very much into the Trump administration, there were weapons coming in to northeast Syria. Of course, there were armament shipments from the U.S.,
right,
and from the coalition to the forces, the SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces in the northeast of Syria. So it's so complex, so many constant shifting allies and relationships that it can sometimes be very difficult. And I understand a lot of the confusion about the conflict.
And dangerous too, of course. All right, so now you're in Vermont, and you've taken a full turn into electoral politics. You were running for Congress in Vermont, and I just want to show a quick clip of your debate that you had with the current rep. Dorsey, can we play the clip about the budget? Hang on one second. So your election's on, it's in 27 days. So you're in the middle of campaign cycle.
I am.
What inspired you to run for Congress?
I mean, really, the pandemic just laid bare the brutality and barbarity of the system. So I said, why not? Why not? I have no sort of megalomania or the ideas that I'm going to win, sort of romantic dreams and aspirations. I know I'm going to lose. I'm polling at 1%, so that's wonderful. I mean, this is a person who's going to be on the ballot. I'm already on the ballot. I voted already. Communist. Like, the word communist is on the ballot.
I mean, it's Vermont, so come on. Like, it's not that much of a stretch.
It is Vermont. It is Vermont. Although living in rural Vermont has a right-wing history.
Yeah.
It was a Republican state until the 70s, 80s. And, of course, it had a strong Ku Klux Klan presence. So yeah, actually, I have the book right here, Fiery Crosses in the Green Mountains.
It's a history of it.
It's a history of, I mean, like, if you look at some of this stuff, I mean, you're surprised that, like, this was Vermont, not the South.
Vermont.
In Vermont. Wow. Yeah. So, when you think about this stuff, you think, oh, Vermont's very progressive and things. It does have a very strong right-wing tendency. So living in a rural area, being a farmer now, on our family farm, I decided that now was the time to speak about working class issues that could hopefully bridge a lot of those divides. And we've had a very positive reception, very, very positive reception. So
all right, we have the clip now, because this is sure. There's a couple moments where I want to show you breaking their minds, basically. All right, let's roll that clip of the budget.
Christopher Helali, could you tell us what your approach to the budget would be on behalf of Vermonters?
I think first and foremost, on behalf of Vermonters and the entire working class all over the country, we must cut the military budget by at least 50%. It is unsustainable to have over 1,000 foreign military bases while Russia has less than 30 and China has less than 10. That's insane. Billions of dollars are wasted every year to support a bloated empire, to support a bloated military-industrial complex that wreaks havoc and bombs and launches drones and does covert actions and coups d'etats and regime change around the world. What have we gained from 20 years of this quote-unquote war on terror? Today, the Taliban is stronger than in 2001. That's a failure of both political parties and the U.S. empire. It's a failure. We've lost all the wars that we fought in. Iraq is a catastrophe. Libya is a disaster. They're selling slaves there. Syria is also a disaster. Everywhere we've gone, we've wreaked destruction and nothing has been gained. Nothing. So the first thing to do is to cut the military, retract all troops from abroad, bring them home, and put all that money, all the trillions of dollars we've spent on war and destruction and empire back into building infrastructure in this country, providing free healthcare, free education, childcare. If you really believe in family values and are pro-life and are committed to the people and the working class, then you have to be against the wars of empire. You have to be against all the violence that we wreak all over the world.
Thank you.
So what I love about that clip is you flip it. You flip the script and use Republican logic, because I mean, this if you really are pro-life, if you really do believe in family values, then really show up. And I think what's really interesting about your story, and I'm not sure everybody who is watching that debate really knows, is you do deeply understand these issues because you've been on the front lines. You were in the military. This isn't like you're coming from a place of idealism and theory. You've literally practiced it and witnessed it up close. Do you think that your opponents are... how are they responding? Like, on that debate stage, how do they respond to you?
For me personally, in the moment, there was really no response. But afterwards, when people saw the clips and people emailed me from all over Vermont and called, and it was very positive reception. Even from people who voted for Trump in 2016, they said it would be the first time they're voting for a communist.
Whoa, interesting.
Yeah. So that's why
that's like a line right there.
I know.
This is, clearly they're scared of communism. So let's talk about a little bit about Vermont. So you've got how many congressional districts?
Only one. It's at large.
So this is Bernie Sanders' former congressional district.
Correct.
Who is the current representative?
Peter Welch.
Tell us about him.
So he's a Democrat. He lives here in Norwich, just 2 towns over from me. And he's progressive on a lot of issues. So nobody can say that he's not progressive on a lot of issues. And he has fought hard for a lot of the things that we care about, but he doesn't go far enough. He's still a part of the Democratic machine, and he's still involved with a lot of the machinations behind the Russiagate and now the anti-China hysteria and a lot of this stuff that I find to be reprehensible. It's part of the imperial ambition, when everybody's standing up clapping for Guaido. I mean, this is unacceptable, I think, for the United States, especially for the left to promote kind of people. I mean, I think Bernie Sanders was one of the only people to sit down or things like that, if I remember correctly. But
sit down, when he in Congress.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. So part of the whole thing is that, Peter, I want to bring the conversation left. The conversation in the United States keeps going to the right.
Yes,
we need
thank
to bring
you.
the conversation to the left. So it's not that I believe, as someone who, is a Marxist-Leninist and has read Lenin. Lenin says we use electoralism, we use bourgeois political system for what? To raise awareness and to raise class consciousness. So people, for example, all the free media I've gotten now, all the ability to say what I believe and what we believe, it's gone out there. So people have said, wow, yeah, that's a good point. I never heard about that. So we're trying to use the system against itself, ultimately. That's what we're trying to do. And we're trying to bring people awareness to this.
I want to show one more clip of your debate. You guys are talking about healthcare, which, of course, has become a central topic. It's sort of the litmus test for whether or not you're progressive. Do you believe in Medicare for all? I've been covering these debates across the country. Last night we covered the McSally, Mark Kelly debate, and there was a lot of wishy-washiness around healthcare. And it's really healthcare and the military-industrial complex. Those seem to be the two issues that neither Republicans or Democrats can find their grounding on it. Dorsey, can we play that clip? You have it ready?
Christopher Helali, what would be your next step in healthcare policy when you go to Washington?
I believe in a free, universal, high-quality healthcare system. I cannot possibly fathom how this country, which sent astronauts into space and landed on the moon, cannot provide every American healthcare. Why? Why is that it's not rocket science. Provide clinics for everyone, provide hospitals for everyone, provide healthcare for everyone, train doctors at no charge, have a healthcare system that's robust. I mean, people have empty slogans, God bless America, we love Americans, United we stand. Well, if United we stand, isn't it patriotic to have every American and every person in this country have healthcare? Isn't it patriotic for everyone to be able to have access to all the needs that they have in terms of medical needs? I just can't fathom how the richest country in history cannot provide health care to all of its citizens. It's unheard of. If places like China with triple the population can have clinics in the smallest rural villages with rice paddies, why can't the United States have that? Why are we closing rural hospitals and clinics? It's unthinkable, but it's all because of capitalism. It's all because of big business and big corporate interests, which many of the politicians in our entire system are beholden to. And so I'm going to fight like tooth and nail for the working class, for workers and farmers who deserve to have health care as a human right, who deserve to not have to worry about going into debt or losing their house or farm because they have medical emergencies. This is not rocket science.
That's great. Your opponent, he's progressive on some issues. Does he believe in Medicare for all?
He did say that he supports Medicare for all. Yeah, but I still think that even Medicare for all doesn't go as far enough to address the basic things that I believe we need. I mean, really, we just need to totally, redo healthcare in this country. We need to build clinics and hospitals. We need to train doctors. Like, why should in our society, why should doctors have to go into hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt to end up serving the people? This should be free. You want to be a doctor? All right, your education is paid for up until the end, and then we're going to send you to some clinic or somewhere so you can serve the people. Are you becoming a doctor to get rich, or are you becoming a doctor to serve the people?
I mean, we see this in Cuba. We interviewed a reporter a few months ago on how Cuba was covering the COVID disaster. And I mean, it's amazing. And they've been doing this for years, sending out, it's not just now during this crisis, sending out doctors around the world. They're the most in-demand doctors around the world when there's a shortage. I mean, there's absolutely no excuse for that here. I think you're spot on.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the late revolutionary leader of Cuba, Fidel Castro, everybody, paranoid, the Miami crowd, they're screaming. Of course, nobody knows how much money they left behind in Cuba during and after the revolution. But Fidel said, "Médicos y no bombas." Like, we want to send doctors. We don't send bombs everywhere. Yeah. The United States exports bombs and armaments. Cuba exports doctors. That's what they do. That's why this year there is a campaign to nominate the medical brigades for the Nobel Peace Prize. Mm-hmm. They should get it. That's Those amazing. People are heroes, not these war criminals who've gotten the Nobel Peace Prize. These doctors who go selflessly, serving the people all over the world in countries where they don't speak the language, where they're not from there, but going because of international solidarity. That's what we need. That's the world we need to go to.
Absolutely. Chris, how can people help out on your campaign? Make phone calls, donate, what can they do?
You can just go on our website, www.christopherhelali.com, and you can follow me on Twitter. We have a donation page. And really, the best thing is not to help me, is to help the movement. It's to get out there. It's to talk to workers and farmers in your communities. A lot of people, talk to me about, emotional labor, this. No. The revolution doesn't come on easy, wings. You got to go out there. You got to fight. You got to sweat. You got to toil in the fields or toil in the factories with workers and farmers all over the country. And yes, they have reactionary views. But in order to convince them about this path forward, you have to spend time with them. You have to be dedicated to that. And you have to chart it out and you have to struggle for it. And I just, before we conclude, I want to say today's a historic day. For you and I are both Greek. And today, of course, we know that in the court in Athens declared Golden Dawn, Christiavgi, a criminal organization. And as someone who has a pending court case in Greece from 2016, when I was arrested fighting Golden Dawn, protecting refugees at our squatted community, I have to say that today is a great day, and of course is a wonderful way for Pavlos Fisas' mother to finally get closure.
Who was murdered at the port?
Who was murdered, exactly. So I think that's a great day, exactly, by Golden Dawn folks. So I think that today is a great day for the anti-fascist movement globally. And I hope that we continue the struggle against fascism, against imperialism, and against capitalism as we build a new world.
Thanks, Chris. If you don't win it this time, how many times did it take Bernie to win in Vermont? Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers.